The truth I'm about to share may feel difficult to accept because it challenges the way you have been understanding everything that happened between you and an avoidant person. Your logical mind may immediately resist it because accepting it would mean looking differently at the moments that caused you the most pain, the silence, the distance, the sudden change in their behavior, the confusing emotional withdrawal. These things may not always mean they stopped caring. Sometimes those painful reactions can come from a place that is completely opposite of what it appears to be. For someone with avoidant attachment patterns, the deeper the emotional connection becomes, the stronger their defenses may become. Think about the moment when things between you started feeling serious, when the bond became stronger, when the connection felt real, when you started feeling like this person was becoming an important part of your life. That is often the exact moment when an avoidant begins to create distance. The pulling away that happens when everything feels closer, the coldness that appears after moments of genuine intimacy, the sudden need for space when there seems to be no obvious reason, the mixed signals that leave you questioning everything. These reactions are often connected to what is happening internally. For an avoidant person, deeper feelings do not always create comfort. Sometimes they create fear. The stronger the attachment becomes, the more their nervous system may interpret that closeness as something threatening. This creates a painful contradiction. The person becomes more important, but they feel the urge to move further away. The connection becomes more valuable, yet their actions make it appear as if they care less. Many people leave these relationships carrying a painful belief. They think they were rejected because they were not enough. They believe the other person became distant because the feelings were never real. They assume the beautiful moments were fake because the ending hurt. But sometimes the truth is much more complicated. To understand avoidant behavior, we have to look deeper than simple choices or personality traits. Avoidance is not only about communication problems or someone being emotionally unavailable. It is often connected to how their nervous system learned to respond to closeness. Many avoidant patterns develop from early experiences, where emotional connection did not always feel safe, consistent, or secure. Somewhere along the way, they learned that needing someone, depending on someone, or opening their heart could lead to disappointment, rejection, pressure, or pain. The nervous system is designed to learn from experiences. It takes what happened in the past and uses it to predict what might happen in the future. If someone repeatedly experienced closeness followed by emotional hurt, their mind and body may begin connecting intimacy with danger. They do not consciously wake up one day and decide that love is dangerous. It is not a deliberate choice. It becomes an automatic protective response built over time. Their inner system begins carrying a belief. When I get too close, I will eventually get hurt. So when someone meaningful enters their life, when the connection becomes deeper, and when emotional intimacy starts growing, their nervous system may respond with protection instead of openness. The very thing they want can become the thing that scares them the most. Love becomes the trigger. Distance becomes the defense. This does not always mean they are trying to hurt you. It is not always a conscious attempt to punish, manipulate, or make you feel rejected. Often, it is an automatic survival response. Their nervous system is trying to protect them from something it has learned to perceive as overwhelming. The painful part is that protection can look exactly like rejection. Someone who is afraid of losing you may act like they do not care. Someone who feels emotionally overwhelmed may become cold. Someone who wants connection but fears vulnerability may create the very distance that damages the relationship they secretly value. This is why understanding the pattern matters. In the beginning stages of a relationship, when things still feel emotionally manageable, avoidant people can often appear warm, affectionate, present, and deeply connected. This is the version of them that people remember after they pull away. You remember the person who made you feel special. You remember the conversations, the laughter, the attention, and the moments when they seemed completely comfortable with you. And after they become distant, one of the hardest questions becomes, was that person ever real? The answer is yes. The connection was real. The affection was real. The person you experienced during those open moments was not an illusion. You were not imagining the bond. You were not foolish for believing their feelings existed. You are seeing a part of them that exists beneath their defenses, a version of them that appears when they feel safe enough to be open and vulnerable. But as the emotional bond grows, something inside them may begin to shift. The relationship moves from something enjoyable into something deeply meaningful. You are no longer just someone they spend time with. You become someone whose presence affects them, someone whose opinion matters, someone whose absence would actually hurt. And that is often when the internal alarm begins. The connection reaches a level their nervous system has learned to fear. From the outside, it feels confusing. You may ask yourself, why would they pull away when things were going so well? Why would they create distance when we were finally becoming closer? But from inside the avoidant experience, it can feel completely different. The deeper the feelings become, the more vulnerable they feel. And vulnerability may feel unsafe. A securely attached person may experience falling in love as warmth, comfort, and emotional growth. They may feel excited about becoming closer and allowing someone into their world. But someone with avoidant patterns may experience that same closeness as a threat to their independence, emotional control, or sense of safety. Instead of feeling only love, they may feel anxiety. Instead of feeling only connection, they may feel pressure. Instead of feeling only happiness, they may feel a strong urge to create space. Their body can react before their conscious mind understands what is happening. They may feel overwhelmed, restless, trapped, or emotionally flooded. They may suddenly believe they need distance, even from someone they genuinely care about. The painful truth is that the person who activates these feelings is often not the person who caused the original wound. They are simply the person who became important enough to bring that wound to the surface. It is not always about something you did wrong. Sometimes your importance is what activated their fear. The closer they feel to you, the more their old protective patterns may fight to regain control. And this is why an avoidant person can sometimes run the hardest from the person they feel the strongest connection with. Because for them, deep love does not only represent comfort, it can also represent risk. It represents the possibility of losing control, needing someone, getting hurt, and facing emotions they have spent years avoiding. Until they become aware of these patterns, their instinct may continue choosing protection over connection. The reaction that follows, the sudden distance, the emotional shutdown, the cold behavior, the way someone can feel deeply connected one day and completely unreachable the next, is often the nervous system trying to protect itself from a perceived threat. It is not always a conscious choice. It is not always a true reflection of what that person feels for you. It can be the body activating an old defense pattern because the intensity of the connection feels too overwhelming to handle. Now, I want to break down the different ways this can appear because avoidant behavior does not always look the same. Understanding these patterns can help you look back at your own experience differently, instead of turning their actions into proof that something was wrong with you. The first pattern is sudden emotional unavailability. One moment, the avoidant person feels open, caring, attentive, and fully present. The connection feels natural. You feel seen. You feel like the bond is mutual. Then, almost without warning, something changes. The warmth disappears. The person who felt close suddenly feels distant. The conversations become shorter. The emotional presence fades. It does not feel like a slow change. It feels like a switch has been turned off, and naturally, you begin searching for an explanation. You wonder what happened. You wonder what you did. You wonder why someone who seemed so connected yesterday feels like a stranger today. But sometimes the shift is not because their feelings disappeared overnight. Sometimes their nervous system recognized that the connection was becoming deeper than they knew how to handle. The closeness that felt beautiful to you may have triggered fear inside them. Their mind and body may have interpreted emotional attachment as a risk, a sign that they were becoming vulnerable, that they could be hurt, that they could lose control. So the emotional wall appears before the pain they are trying to avoid. The second pattern is creating problems where there were previously no problems. An avoidant person who feels overwhelmed by deep attachment may suddenly start noticing flaws, focusing on small issues, or becoming critical in ways that feel confusing. Things that never bothered them before suddenly become important. A quality they once admired may become something they question. A small mistake may become a major concern. You may feel like you are being judged for things that were never an issue before, almost as if you are failing a test you never knew existed. But what may be happening internally is a search for emotional distance. The avoidant nervous system begins looking for evidence that makes the relationship feel less threatening. It starts searching for reasons to reduce the intensity of the attachment. If they can convince themselves that the connection is not as special, that you are not as perfect, or that the relationship is not as meaningful as it feels, then the emotional risk becomes easier to manage. This is one of the most painful contradictions of avoidant behavior. The person who may care deeply can sometimes become the person who focuses most on your flaws, not necessarily because they want to destroy your confidence, but because their mind is trying to create enough distance to feel safe again. The third pattern is withdrawing the very thing that made the relationship feel special. Maybe they were once incredibly attentive. Maybe they remembered small details about you. Maybe they made you feel understood in a way you had never experienced before. Maybe they gave you a sense that someone finally saw the real you. And then, as the connection became deeper, that same emotional presence began disappearing. The attention became limited. The affection became controlled. The warmth that once felt natural became something you had to search for. And this can be one of the most painful parts because you are not only missing the person, you are missing the version of the connection that made you believe in the relationship. You may find yourself asking, what did I do to lose this? Why did they stop seeing me the way they used to? But the answer may not be that you did something wrong. Sometimes what changed was not your value. Sometimes what changed was their ability to tolerate the depth of the connection. The closeness became too real, the feelings became too intense, and instead of moving closer, their instinct pushed them away. But I want to pause here because there is something extremely important we need to understand. When we talk about avoidant psychology, there is a danger of misunderstanding the message. Understanding someone's wounds does not mean you should excuse harmful behavior. Understanding why someone pulls away does not mean you should continue accepting being hurt. Knowing that fear may be underneath their actions does not mean you are responsible for carrying the weight of their unhealed patterns. The explanation is not an excuse. The pain they caused you still matters. Your feelings still matter. Your boundaries still matter. A person can love you and still not be emotionally ready to treat you in the way you deserve. Someone can have deep feelings and still create damage if they are unable to face their own fears. What this understanding gives you is not a reason to tolerate more pain. It gives you the ability to stop blaming yourself, because without this understanding, many people create a painful story in their mind. They think, they treated me worse as they got to know me, so I must have become less attractive to them. They saw the real me, and that made them lose interest. The deeper someone gets to know me, the less they will want me. My true self is too much. My vulnerability pushes people away. But that story is not the truth. The experience may have been real. The hurt may have been real. The distance may have been real. But the meaning you attach to it may be completely wrong. Someone pulling away does not automatically mean you became less valuable. Someone struggling with intimacy does not mean you are impossible to love. Sometimes the opposite can be true. The more they connected with you, the more important you became. The more important you became, the more vulnerable they felt. The more vulnerable they felt, the stronger their defenses became, not because you were too much in a negative way, but because you became deeply significant to someone whose nervous system learned to fear deep emotional attachment. And now the most important question becomes this: can an avoidant person actually change? Because understanding the reason behind their behavior is only the beginning. The next step is understanding whether they have the ability and willingness to face these patterns, take responsibility, and build a healthier way of loving. The pattern we have been discussing, that the worse an avoidant person treats you, the stronger their feelings may be, is not a permanent definition of who they are. It is not their true identity. It is a sign of an unhealed emotional system responding through old protective patterns. These patterns are learned, and anything learned can eventually be changed. A nervous system that once connected love with danger can slowly learn that love can also mean safety, stability, trust, and emotional security. Through self-awareness, healing, and consistent effort, A person can develop the ability to experience closeness without immediately feeling the need to escape from it. But this process is not easy. It does not happen overnight, and it does not happen simply because someone loves you enough. There is a difference between wanting to change and actually having the willingness to face the difficult work required to change. Healing avoidant patterns means confronting fears that may have existed for years. It means learning to sit with vulnerability instead of running from it. It means staying present during moments of emotional discomfort instead of automatically choosing distance. The very defenses that once helped protect them are often the same defenses they must learn to release. That takes honesty, that takes courage. And most importantly, it requires them to choose the work for themselves. What I want you to understand is that the avoidant person who pushed you away because their feelings became overwhelming is capable of becoming someone who can love differently. Change is possible. People can learn to respond with openness instead of fear. They can learn to stay connected even when intimacy feels uncomfortable. I have seen people do this. I have seen avoidant individuals recognize their patterns, face their emotional wounds, and slowly build the ability to remain present when closeness activates fear. But that transformation only happens when they decide that changing is more important than protecting themselves. And for many avoidant people, that realization does not come easily. Sometimes it takes time, sometimes it takes consequences, sometimes it takes losing something meaningful, and finally understanding the cost of continuing the same pattern. But here is the part I need you to truly understand. Their healing is not your responsibility. You cannot create their breakthrough through your patience. You cannot love someone into emotional readiness. You cannot sacrifice yourself, accept endless hurt, or keep waiting for the person beneath their defenses to finally appear. Many people make this mistake. They see the good inside someone. They see their potential. They remember the moments of connection. They believe that if they just stay understanding enough, supportive enough, and patient enough, eventually the other person will overcome their fears. But what often happens is something different. The person waiting slowly becomes exhausted. The person offering endless compassion begins losing pieces of themselves. The person trying to hold space for someone else's healing begins forgetting that they also deserve to feel safe, valued, and loved. The avoidant person's healing journey belongs to them. It begins when they choose it, not when someone else loves them harder, not when someone else tolerates more pain, not when someone else keeps proving they are safe. Your role is not to rescue someone from patterns they have not decided to change. Your responsibility is to be honest with yourself about what you are experiencing right now, not the future version of them you hope to see, not the potential you believe exists, not the beautiful moments that occasionally appear beneath the defenses, but the reality of the relationship as it exists today. Ask yourself, is the way I am being treated right now something I can continue accepting? Is this connection helping me become more secure, or is it causing me to question my own worth? Am I loving someone while slowly abandoning myself? Because hope for someone's growth should never require you to sacrifice your own emotional health. If the current reality is damaging your confidence, your peace, and your ability to trust yourself, then that truth deserves to be acknowledged, even when accepting it hurts, even when walking away feels impossible, even when part of you still believes in who they could become. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is stop waiting for someone else to become ready. And I want to leave you with the most important message from everything we have explored today. The painful treatment you experienced was not proof that you were not enough. It was not proof that you were too difficult to love. It was not proof that your needs were too much or that your emotions were a burden. Your worth was never the problem. The distance, the coldness, and the withdrawal were reflections of their internal struggles, not a measurement of your value. You were not pushed away because you mattered less. Sometimes you were pushed away because you mattered more than their unhealed emotional system knew how to handle. You became important enough to activate their deepest fears. The connection was real, the feelings may have been real, the fear was also real. And sometimes the hurtful behavior is simply fear expressed through unhealthy protection. But you do not have to carry that fear for them. You do not have to make yourself smaller so someone else feels comfortable. You do not have to question your value because someone else struggled to receive what you offered. Your depth is not a weakness. Your ability to love deeply is not a problem. Your vulnerability is not something you need to hide. The right person will not experience your love as a threat. They will experience it as something rare. They will not run from your emotional depth. They will meet you there. They will not make you prove your worth. They will recognize it. What happened was not a final judgment on who you are. It was a reflection of someone else's limitations. And there is a powerful difference between those two things. One story tells you to shrink yourself so you are easier to love. The other reminds you that you were always worthy of a love that knows how to stay. A love that is not afraid of closeness. A love that does not disappear when things become real. A love that can receive everything you are without needing to escape from it. That kind of love exists. And after everything you have learned, after everything you have survived, the most important thing you can do now is remember this. You were never too much. You were simply waiting for someone who was emotionally ready enough to hold what you had always been willing to give.